Notice the facial looks. This man here being berated perhaps by the other. Here men condemned to something, certainly the allusion to the devil, but the devil has a hand on that man who looks contritely resigned to his fate. There the reader of laws, no doubt, the executioner. Here two men, poor men, from their patched clothes. These represent virtuous and honest petty public officials, scrupulous in their duty, honest yet compassionate, able to draw that fine line. These people are responsible for birds, for looking into their safety, their reproduction, what's been happening to them. This is the deep-rooted disease department. Notice some man has lost his foot, perhaps diabetes. Others somehow complaining of ailments. This man, certainly obesity. This is the department of river gods, somehow. Perhaps these epitomize fishermen, people who are associated with the river. And these are perhaps river gods. This is the department for the promotion of 15 different good lifestyles. Perhaps their headdresses, and their clothing, the implements they carry indicate what those lifestyles might be. You would think that of mother, this perhaps of merchant, but those clothes would certainly have been identifiable to an earlier Chinaman. This is the department for wandering ghosts. Notice the trident. This is the department of wind gods. Interesting creatures. Perhaps this man has a fan, or this god has a fan as a symbol of that. What's the other man who looks like he's shooting his fingers like a gun? Has a hairy chest. So this is the department of suppressing schemes. Now that guy has a curious look on his face. Are these, for example, people who are con artists, etc.? What is that tool in his left hand, not to mention his right? Here's some examples, two examples of those glazed pieces that you usually see on top of a huge temple like in the Forbidden City. It's interesting to see that they're composed of parts and then held together with some probably kind of strapping. Here we get a little bit of a close-up of this glazing. How deep it is. I'm guessing these are made out of cement. Not a precise process. You can see that this piece, after it was glazed, was laid so that this part was down. This part here was lying down flat, and so everything dripped down. This is the next inner courtyard, actually a large one divided by that wall down there. Some of the Beijing landscape. Here a large side courtyard. Notice you can see bells on the ends of these roof points. Again divided in half. Some whimsical characters on the wall for some reason. Here, some very interesting cylindrical something or others. They're columns, but they're of irregular size. They do match the upper three at least, if not on the middle one, all four match in context, in other words the design, but what they're used for, anybody's guess. Here a man with a very long beard, but what or who does he symbolize? This display is interesting. It's a display of grinding mechanisms. I wonder if you could attach a horse to this one. But notice this is a section of a funnel, if you will, design. So it's not a perfect cylinder. And notice also, at least on the outside part, maybe it was the case on the inside, which is lower because it's been worn, that was marked up like this, perhaps to create more grinding action. But the mere fact that a certain amount is missing probably would be an indicator that those people who ate this bread made from this flour suffered severe dental problems later in life as their teeth wore down to the nerves. How frightening that is. This interesting. It has this little trough around the side for the material to accumulate in when it was ground, unless they used water, and that's what this hole was for. Don't know. Maybe this was for putting this stuff down into. And this appears to be a perfect cylinder, or close to it. But again, the same striations, not as heavily worn, maybe not used as long. But you can tell that this was something that was probably used for quite some time. It's such a mix of stone, and then the wood, and then held, and the technique of this mortising, I think it's called. But yet held together by wire, and yet this steel post in here that's been pounded many, many times down into wherever it initially was. I picked the wrong time to disclaim all temples as being the same. This one has some very unique features to see. Board is a collection of these little tokens that are little blocks of wood with tassels on them that people leave as an offering, kind of like candles, yet these are more permanent, and certainly more permanent than the incense. And now we're in the other half of that main courtyard, in other words, beyond the two separating walls that we saw. Here with a pavilion, some reason, I don't know what it's used for. This is interesting, a diorama of a small either town or temple complex, including wall. I don't think it's this one, but it may be. That may be where we are right now. See the two dividing walls on either side of that building there. Of course, this design or some version of it was standard for these kinds of building complexes. All linear. Okay, I think this is a model of either that first gate that we looked at or of the actual entrance gate that I came through after I paid my ticket. I guess it's the latter because it looks like it's more of a building than simply a wall. Here we also have a good example of how these doors and these wall partitions swung and were pivoted. That stone at the bottom has a hole in it, and then this shaft went into it, and there's a similar thing up at the top. This looks like a very intricate stone carving. What it's off, I don't know. Although that looks like a foot there and a hoof. This apparently is the gate I passed through at a much earlier time. An old drawing of people entering or exiting the temple.